As some of you know, my daughter Britta, her husband Gary, and their 3 boys are on Hagerman Lake in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They do this most summers. And we often go to visit them there. And if you stand on their dock in the middle of the night, you look up and you see 1 billion brilliant stars filling the sky. There you can see the trail of our galaxy as if someone had spilled a pitcher of milk across the night. Gary, my son-in-law, handed a pair of binoculars to me once in the middle of the night there and said, "Take a look up there." And he pointed in a certain direction. He said, "Look through here, and you can see the galaxy that is our neighbor, the Andromeda galaxy." And so I looked. And there it was, just a little bright speck. Gary told me later that it was 11.7 million light years away. Okay, I don't know about you, but I don't get that. The distance that light travels in a year is over 5 trillion miles. So the light we see from the Andromeda galaxy has traveled 11 million light years times 5 trillion miles to get here. I cannot come close to imagining what the number is. No matter how long it took to get here, it's longer than I would ever know. And I hope that it went to the bathroom before it left. But it raises to mind these questions. What on earth is this universe? Who are we walking on 2 feet in this tiny little pebble? In Upper Michigan, you can see why people are driven to astronomy. Because the stars evoke our curiosity, our wonder. But we are not going to Hagerman Lake this summer. No. We are staying here in New England because there is a Moon family reunion which is happening at our place here in New England sometime in August. And that, of course, means that we have to finish the deck that is on the back of our house. And I use the word "we" very loosely, because there is really one person who has had to dig the holes, which I did this Friday, for the cement pylons to go into, for the deck to be built on top of. It's a very simple job to do. All you are doing is you're digging 4 holes that are 40 inches deep, and they are 8 inches across. Nothing to it. I figured 2 hours. I get my shovel out, I start digging, clank, 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 clank. And 6 hours later, and these holes are not 8 inches across. These are now the size of kiddie pools in our yard. Because why? Because there are rocks in the ground in New England. There are rocks the size of golf balls. There are rocks the size of frisbees. There are rocks the size of my Thanksgiving turkey in the ground just waiting for me to try to dig a hole. Why are there rocks in New England? I'm more than a little bit curious at this point. And this sent me to a book by a fellow named Chet Ramo, who is a scientist, who also lives in New England and has also had to dig holes. And he understands my pain. He says that the rocks that he finds digging the holes, they are not the same color as the green volcanic bedrock that's way deep in New England. No, these are different kinds of rocks altogether. Sedimentary and granitic rocks, other kinds of rocks. And you know what? Those rocks don't come from here. No, they came from Concord, New Hampshire, Montpelier, Vermont, and believe it or not, up in Canada. What the heck are they doing here? Why don't those people come back and pick them up? This is ridiculous. But of course they can't, right? Because you know the answer. Those rocks were dumped here 15,000 years ago by the glacier at the end of the Ice Age. Because the glacier came across, northern New England and scraped all the mountaintops off and scraped all the rocks off. And then when the ice started to melt and it couldn't hold the rocks anymore, all the silt and the sand, it ran off into what is now the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. And all the heavier rocks, the ones the size of golf balls and frisbees and Thanksgiving turkeys, they were all dumped right in my backyard. I mean, this is a pretty amazing world we live in. Everything has a story. Nothing is just simply what it is. There is curiosity that is raised all the time. Einstein said, as I quoted in the bulletin, never lose a holy curiosity. So I guess I'm in good company. The word curious, in case you were curious, comes from an old word, cura. It's an old French word, the meaning of which is to look after. And it barely survives with this meaning in our present day speech, except with the word curate, which is how some Episcopal churches refer to the one that looks after a parish, a curate. But this word historically develops into curiosus, which foreshadows our word curious, which on the one hand means odd, eccentric, and strange, which refers to some of the people who are gathered here today. I'm not going to name any names. But on the other hand, means the attention and exploration that is driven by a thirst for knowledge. The attention and exploration that is driven by a thirst for knowledge. Scientists hypothesize that curiosity is a shortcut of evolution. And these shortcuts are called neoteny. Neoteny is like a media bundle that you get from Cox, where you get the internet, the phone, and the computer all at once in one bundle. Neoteny is a bunch of characteristics that are passed down as a group. And the neoteny bundle in this case for human beings is the retention of juvenile characteristics. So as a species, we are more childlike than other mammals. That's so great. For instance, we are less hairy than other mammals. I don't know if they've seen my Uncle Vic's back. And we have a large brain in relation to body size. We are weaker than other primates, and we have a lifelong curiosity and playfulness. So curiosity is a function of neoteny, the evolutionary shortcut. Why else would Google have been invented? Bless you. Except for curiosity. We want answers, and we want a shortcut right now. Curiosity also shows up right there in the 3rd chapter of Genesis. We don't refer to it that way, but there it is. God said, "Not you can eat of any tree you want in the garden, but not the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." And guess what? Eve is curious. Talk about retaining juvenile characteristics. The parent says no, and the kid says, "Oh yeah." There she is, Eve. And the serpent, whom I take to be a voice in Eve's own heart, since we know serpents don't talk, the serpent says, "It's good. Try it. You'll like it. You won't die." And it was a delight to the eyes, it says, and it was food, and it was supposed to make you wise. I mean, let's be honest. Wouldn't you be curious about that? I mean, I would. It doesn't take that to get me curious about food. So she plucks it off and she takes a bite. Now, I take this to be in the genre of stories that is like how the elephant got its trunk. I don't take it to be a literal, factual story. It's a wisdom story in which the ancient writer of Genesis asks him or herself, why is it that we have all of this pain and struggle in life? And the answer is that we have all of this because we were curious. But I want you to think of what the idea of paradise does to us. Think of the comfort that we find in the idea of paradise. Think of the comfort that we find in what we know. As you saw just a moment ago. Oh, yeah. I have a dumb phone. This is not a smartphone. This is a dumb phone. And this is a dumb phone that I know how to use. And even though these, I have a missed call. Even though I can open it up and text on these little letters and symbols here that are way too small for any adult's thumb to actually punch in easily, even though that's the case, I don't want a smartphone. You know why? Because I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm too dumb for a smartphone. And it's probably true. I'm afraid that everything is going to change. And people tell me it'll all be for the better. Oh, you're going to be able to be in contact with so many more people. And you're going to be able to do all of your communicating right there. But I know you say that that's a good thing, but how do I know that that's a good thing? It could be a really bad thing. I don't know. I'm not sure. But there's a kind of paradise here in my dumb phone. Because I know it so well, and I'm comfortable with it. And even though sometimes I text bad words off because I can't hit the right things, and even though sometimes I can't read it because the letters on the screen don't seem to be large enough for anybody over the age of 50, I really want to hold on to it and just treasure it as a kind of paradise. The idea of paradise, here, would you turn this off for me? The idea of paradise is a very seductive idea. What it does is it numbs my curiosity. It numbs my curiosity about this smartphone. And if I let it numb me enough, I won't even take the time to go experiment with it and explore with it. Which, of course, is what evolution says that we're created to do, to explore, to get out there and learn about things. I know that the cell phone's a little silly example, but there's a gazillion things for human beings that this applies to. I mean, many in my age cohort think that the 50s were paradise. But in the 50s, African Americans couldn't vote in some states, and women didn't have equality in the workplace. We look back at it, and it seems as if it was paradise, but it wasn't. And this is always the case. There never was a paradise, literally, other than this messy paradise in which you and I live today, with all the struggles that the writer of Genesis names as punishment. Women will have pain in childbirth. Men will have to toil with brambles and thistles to get food, and the snake will crawl around on its belly and eat dust. But this pain is only a small fraction of the complex beauty we know as creation. Our curiosity, then, is something essential. Eve had to eat the fruit. Human beings have to have knowledge, and particularly the knowledge of good and evil, for they erupt from our very hearts. Our curiosity is essential in terms of evolution, because the universe is so vast and so complex and so mysterious that we have to have something innate to drive us toward understanding the world, lest we simply get a cup of coffee and a cookie and watch Andy of Mayberry on the couch and long for the paradise that seems to represent. But there's one more thing I want to point out, and that is that the mission at the center of our faith, to love God and to love neighbor, is also a function of curiosity. So when this team of people go to Appalachia, they are going to a subculture that is different than ours. And they will be, quote, looking after some of the practical problems there. Your curates, you see, in that way. But on the other hand, they may meet some curious people there. That is, curious because they seem strange and odd to our ways. Curious because they don't leave the poverty-stricken villages where their families have been for generations. And our suburban subculture thinks nothing of leaving our families to move across country just to get a raise. Curious because they may not have the same book learning education as we have, while getting into the best possible schools is our subculture's guide to success. Curious because they don't count themselves as failures because of their low economic status, while the amount of money that we make or don't make tends to be the way our subculture judges itself. And in this meeting of subcultures, it just may be that you may see how curious, strange, and odd you are. And consequently, how strange and odd our suburban subculture is, because you have had a meeting with another subculture. You have come to understand that this is not, the suburban subculture is not the only reality in which we live. And in that way, you come to know yourselves better. Because curiosity, in the end, holy curiosity, as Einstein calls it, is yes, to seek to understand the story of the stars and rocks, but also to better understand our own story and how we fit in the family of all things, how we fit in the mystery of God. I wonder how it's going to work out. I'm so curious.